Last class? Transpiration is already over, no? Over? We have just started. Transpiration. We were doing the questions, I remember. Questions kar rahe the. Guttation, bleeding, that was the last topic I was discussing. Okay, we'll do this question. Last class, we had been doing some of the diagram-based questions. Let us discuss with those. Diagram-based questions we had already discussed. Give reasons for the diagram. Anybody who has the other book? All of you here using Selena? No, there. We'll complete with some few more questions from this chapter. Take out your notebook, all of it. Notebooks. We'll do some revision questions. Number one, fast. एक तो लेट आते हो ऊपर से 15 मिनट तुम्हारा दिल का हाल सुना रहे बाद में सुनाना बायो लेक्चर के बाद. Number one, give reason questions. Those only I want to discuss. Number one, plants have to pay the price of photosynthesis. Plants have to pay the price in the form. क्यों? उसको बेंच में हैंडराइटिंग ज्यादा अच्छा होता है. Plants have to pay the price of photosynthesis. The price of photosynthesis in the form of transpiration. In the form of transpiration. 3 lines for the answer. Number 2. 3 lines for the answer. Number 2. Transpiration is a. These are very common questions you get in the paper. Transpiration is a necessary evil. Transpiration is a necessary evil. 3 lines for the answer. Number 3. Necessary evil. EVIL. Number 3. Some plants show wilting of the leaves. Some plants show wilting of the leaves. You should wear a mask. A mask. Some plants show wilting of the leaves even when soil is well watered. Even when soil is well watered. 2-3 lines for the answer. A higher rate of transpiration is recorded on a windy day. A higher rate of transpiration is recorded on a windy day as compared to a calm day. As compared to a calm day. CALM, calm day. Leaves of a plant. Leaves of a plant roll up. Leaves of a plant roll up on a bright sunny day. Leaves of a plant roll up on a bright sunny day. On a bright sunny day. Next category, name the following. Name the following. A plant in which stomata are sunken. Plants in which stomata are sunken. Type of leaf, type of leaves, type of leaves in which stomata are equally distributed on the dorsal and ventral surface. Are equally distributed on the dorsal and ventral surface. On the dorsal and ventral surface. Respiratory openings on the stem of woody plants. Respiratory openings on the stem of woody plants. Process of release of water and minerals. Process of release of water and salts. Water and salts, not minerals, right? Water and salts from the leaf surface. Water and salts from the leaf surface. Minerals cut off from the water and salts from the leaf surface. Last one. Margins of the leaf surface. Leaf surface will not be very accurate. Margins of it. That also is there. The last one. Apparatus which measures water intake by a shoot. Apparatus which measures water intake by a shoot. Chalo, complete sir. Give reason. See how many of these questions you are able to answer. Any question you are doubtful, maybe one or two, maybe a bit doubtful. We will discuss that. Start. Your answer should not be more than 1 or 2 sentences. So let's start with the first one.
Ma'am, when are you going to start the circulatory system?
After half an hour. After 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes.
Okay, ma'am.
Where are you again today?
Sorry?
Why are you again today at home?
Sorry, ma'am, your voice is breaking.
Huh? I'm going to break your bones. Why are you at home today?
Oh, I have exam tomorrow.
One day you are coming to the class, one day you are at home. What is this?
I have an exam tomorrow. So
Tomorrow?
yeah.
Okay. Yes, just we finish this questions, 10-15 minutes, and I'm going to start with circulatory system.
Okay, ma'am.
The first answer, over. All of you could write the first answer. What is the first answer? Okay. I'll give you 10 minutes. Chalo, whatever. Some of you will get stuck with some questions. If you have a doubt, keep asking. First answer kya hai? First question kya hai? What I gave you? First question I gave you is plants have to pay the price of photosynthesis in the form of transpiration. What's the answer? We discussed it. What do you think? One sentence, two sentences, what do you write? Plants have to pay a price in the form of transpiration to carry out photosynthesis. No, that's the question. For the process of photosynthesis, guard cells need to be turgid for the inward diffusion of carbon dioxide, but along with inward diffusion of carbon dioxide, release of water in the form of water vapor is also happening. But why price? Why the word price in the form of transpiration? Because more the water loss, the plant has to utilize energy to drag that water up there again from the roots, from the soil. That is why. So if you are not able to write, please, you may write down the answer. Those who are writing, continue. Plants have to pay the price in the form of photosynthesis. So we write answer. For the process of photosynthesis, guard cells need to be turgid and stoma wide for carbon dioxide diffusion. For carbon dioxide inward diffusion. Stoma wide open, no, stoma wide for carbon dioxide inward diffusion. Carbon dioxide inward diffusion, comma, which also releases, which also results, not releases, which also results in the loss of, water in the form of vapor. Which also results in the loss of water in the form of vapor. Next क्या लिखना है? Even Q. Because it is losing out, or by the process of transpiration, water is lost out. Should the plants actually give away water? The plants may give away surplus water, but since the process of transpiration, so much of the water is given out, the plant also has to utilize so many cells and energy in the process of dragging the water.
We can say like because stomata are open for photosynthesis, therefore transpiration takes place.
This answer you will write whenever you get a question, how is photosynthesis and transpiration interlinked? Whenever ऐसे वाला question आएगा, then you have to write down the relation of photosynthesis. But that's why I gave you both at the same time. For this answer, what do you write? Why it is considered as an evil? It is considered as an evil meaning something disadvantageous, no, for the plant. Now, why disadvantageous? Why is transpiration disadvantageous? Because, of course, we understand transpiration is a good process because it can deal away with the excess of water. But quite a number of times we understand that when the plant is in need of conservation of water, then also it is losing away water. So at that time, there should be certain methods. Why should the plant lose away so much of water? Because if it loses that much, it has to drag also. It has to drag up also. So that concept here, right on, let's write in 2 lines. Transpiration is the release of surplus water in the form of vapor. Is the release of surplus water in the form of vapor. Comma. But excessive loss of water, may be disadvantageous. Excessive loss of water may be disadvantageous. And also plants need to utilize energy to replace the loss. Plants need to utilize energy to replace the loss. Utilize energy to replace the lost water, to replace the loss. Third, will you write on your own? Will you be able to write on your own? Number 3, are you giving the answers? Number 3, what it says, number 3 is, I said number 3, some plants wilting of the leaves even when the soil is well watered. Why? Wilting in dry season we understand, hot weather we understand, but why soil is well watered but still wilting? What? When the rate of transpiration uptake. The rate of transpiration and the rate of intake of the water should be more or less at par. Quite often, the rate of transpiration may be comparatively much higher. But the soil is well watered. But even if the soil is well watered, the roots have a limited capacity of undergoing absorption or osmosis. No. So at that time, it will slow the process of wilting. So that one is right. When the rate of transpiration, rate of water loss is much higher than the rate of osmosis or the rate of intake of water by the roots. When the rate of loss of water is much higher than the rate of intake by the roots. Rate of intake by the roots. Next, try the next question. Try the next question. Next is what? First. Next is what? That is very simple. A higher rate of transpiration is going to be. What to write? What is exactly that should be your answer? Transpiration. The rate of transpiration increases with the velocity of the wind. Meaning, if the rate of if the wind is blowing faster, the surrounding area of the leaf is becoming dry. That part has to be there. It is driving away all the moisture. The surrounding area of the leaf is becoming dry. So that osmosis, the diffusion can happen. So that you know all of it. And what is that? Roll up on a bright sunny day. Did I give you? Yes. Roll up. To reduce the surface area and also the rate of water loss. Why are they rolling up? So that they can hide all the stomata, so that the stomata is not involved in the process of water loss. Because the environment is so dry enough. If they are spreading out, the water will be lost. So that concept you have to write to minimize the surface area and the water loss. The moment they are rolling up, stomata are getting. And I gave you one question in the next section, that is similar condition we are talking about. No, a plant where the stomata sunk in. So that is what is happening when you talk about rolling of the leaves. That is what is happening when you talk about the rolling of the leaves. Done. Name the following, फटाफट करो 2 minute में. Some questions in Selena. Diagram based questions I already told you, which are very important. Apart from that, also some of the questions which is already come in the board papers. You may come across also in the solved section, okay, at the end of the chapter. Just one last question to discuss. I will just read out the question and you can just tally with the diagram and check, you know, the answers for this. Name the parts A and B. You know this. A is guard cells. B is stoma. What is the biological term for the structure? What to write? Stomatal apparatus. Apparatus. So that's why I'm discussing this. Don't only write stomata. Stomatal apparatus. Stomatal apparatus you have to write. Okay. Because it is not only showing you the stomata and the guard cell, it is showing you also the surrounding cells. And surrounding there are a group of cells present. Okay, so that is the first thing. What is the function of part A? Function of part A. It regulates the opening and closing of the stoma. Regulates the opening and guard cell. No, part A is guard cells. Guard cells always regulate the opening and closing. Regulate the opening. Mention two structural features of A when which help in the function mentioned above. What is the function you are writing? Opening and closing of the stoma. Relating to that, we have to write two structural features of the guard cell. We can say
Ma'am,
we can say that it's
point outer wall.
structural feature. ये तो structural feature नहीं हुआ ना, classic with the physiological conditions. Structural feature जो regulation of the stoma में help कर रहा है. That is the question.
In that big wall outer.
Structural feature, yes. You can write about one structural feature of the guard cell is it has got a inner thick wall, outer thin wall. What is the other one? Two structural feature you have to write. Two structural feature you have to write. What is the other one? Two structural feature of the guard cells.
That's chloroplast.
Okay, it has chloroplast, and chloroplast is associated with. Is chloroplast associated with the regulating of the stoma?
Yes.
Is chloroplast associated with the regulation of the regulation and closing? You have to write down the point. So the first point is the inner lining thick, outer lining thick. How is it associated with the opening and closing? When the cell is becoming turgid, it is the outer lining which curves and the inner lining pushes inward, which is allowing the stoma to widen up. Yes, it is associated. Can we talk about the chloroplast associated? Is the chloroplast associated with the opening up of the stoma? How?
During the daytime.
It is the chloroplast which is allowing or making the guard cell hypertonic and hence the turgid. So what are the two structural features? Please write it down. Please write down this answer there. What are the two structural features? Your structure. You have to only write about its structure. Number one, the first structural feature is the inner wall is thick, outer wall is thin, which is also actually allowing the opening, closing of the stomach. Inner wall thick and outer wall is thin. So that's the first feature. Number two. Number two, presence of chloroplast. Presence of chloroplast. Where is the structure likely to be found in a leaf? On the lower epidermis. Always in between the epidermal cells. Major. Lower epidermis. Majorly on the lower epidermis. How many other cells are found surrounding the structure? Now this diagram is something like this. No need of drawing the diagram for you all. I'm just drawing a rough diagram. How many other type of cells you come across? 1 and 2. These are the two other type of cells. So one is which type of cell? Plant cell. One is no one. I'm saying this is 1 and this is 2. So what are the surrounding cells? You have to know the names. Exactly just after guard cell. What is that type of cell? Epidermal. After epidermal, what is that type of cell? Subsidiary. Subsidiary cell. So these names you have to know. Check the diagram in your book. Keep that diagram that you have, stomata. The diagram of the stomata. Questions you get on this. In Selena, this question is not there, but this question comes. You are always asked, what is this type of a cell? What is this type of a cell? What are these cells also known as? Guard cells. So what are the surrounding cells of the guard cells? Exactly the type of cells surrounding the guard cell. Next to the guard cell is
Epidermal.
epidermal. This one will be epidermal. So if I talk about 1 and 2, one is subsidiary cells. And 2 is epidermal. Okay. And also take the diagram of stomata that you have in your book. Okay. The rest of the diagram based questions I asked you the other day to solve. Now, name the following all done. If it is done, then we move on to the next chapter. Chemical coordination. The other day, we were talking about circulatory system. Chemical coordination. What did we decide the other day when you all have your exams?
8th October.
8th October. What was Ayan saying? Yes, Ayan, what were you saying? When is your exam?
Ma'am, my exam is on 29th August.
29th August.
Yes.
Circulatory system is there.
Yes.
Achha. Excretory system already we have finished. No, I think in that case we take circulatory because that's the elaborate chapter also. And you also have circulatory in your exam. Achha, but chemical coordination is easy. In case we are not able to complete the chapter, you can manage. Now, Bolo, what were you saying? What were you saying? Start with circulatory system because the other chapter, what happened? The other chapter related chemical coordination, I'm not starting because he had been asking this chapter for a long time. And his exam is earlier than yours. So let us take that first. In case we are able to finish with chemical coordination, that would be very good. If not, for this exam, we have to manage. Now, we start with circulatory systems. First, we talk about is body fluids. What are body fluids? What are their functions? What are body fluids? When we are talking about the fluid component, the fluid present in variety of organisms. Now, first of all, when I talk about the concept of body fluids, the primary body fluid that we have already you know, that is what is known as blood. Is there any other fluid that we have in our body? Lymph. Can you just tell me a major difference between these two? Lymph and blood. Can you just tell me a major difference between these two? Lymph. Lymph. जोर से बोलो ना. What are you saying clearly? ये सीखा था क्या लास्ट ईयर में और नहीं कुछ सीखा था टिश्यूज में नहीं था when we are talking about blood and limbs, the major thing always to understand, of course we are going to talk a little bit in detail also in this chapter. When we are talking about body fluids, we are going to come across body fluids primarily. We are talking about blood if it is vertebrates, but there are so many invertebrates also which have body fluids, but they don't have anything known as blood. They don't have anything known as blood in their body. So if I have to talk about the body fluids, can you name other organisms? Can you name two organisms which are invertebrates? पता है invertebrates? Ringworm. Ringworm क्या है? Ringworm तो एक disease है. Tapeworm. Earthworm. Correct. बस.
Lizard.
Bus, done. Now, when we talk about these type of organisms, if I name the starfishes, if I name this earthworm, if I talk about not exactly the tapeworm, so I talk about right from the annelids, the roundworms or this annelids like the earthworms. I talk about the snails. I talk about variety of other different type of slugs and mollusks. I talk about the starfishes. These type of organisms, if you try to crush them, we get to see now the beautiful cockroaches. If I talk about this cockroaches, if I just crush, so many of these boys must be doing that dirty work, crushing these cockroaches. Now, if you talk about this insects, a number of these beetles and cockroaches, when you crush them, you must have seen some whitish color fluid coming out. That is their body fluid. The earthworm that we talk about, the moment you cut its body, a greenish fluid coming out. And variety of such type of invertebrates, when I say, whenever you cut open their body, a variety of bluish fluid comes out, greenish fluid comes out, some faint reddish fluid comes out. It is not as bluish in variety of these mollusks, the slugs and those, the crabs and all these. So when we have mollusks, slugs, all these. So when we are talking bluish, greenish, yellowish also, and whitish. Now these type of fluids are performing some common functions that the blood performs in our body. But when I talk about the blood, it is a profuse type of a body fluid. It is a very complex type of a body fluid that only developed organisms have. Now, if I say that the word blood starts only from the concept of vertebrates actually, but of course, when we have to go into the detailed concept, I may say that blood is a concept which we also use for some mollusks, some echinoderms. Now that's a different concept. I'm not talking about animal world here. I'm only understanding that if I have to talk about the word blood in the true sense, right from the vertebrates, and are fishes a vertebrate?
Yes.
Why? Because they have blood. Very smart. So when we are talking about the fishes and the amphibians and the frogs and the toads, I talk about the snakes and the lizards. All these are vertebrates, and every of these type of an organism, you're going to come across something known as blood present in them. So when we are talking about blood present, then what do we understand? The blood should have certain type of chemical composition in the liquid part. It should have certain definite type of cells, and it should have a particular type of a respiratory pigment. If all these criteria fulfills, then that type of a body fluid, we will name it as blood, and performing a variety of functions. So first of all, when we are talking about body fluid, let us learn a little bit about blood, and then some functions. We'll talk about lymph later. Of course, here we are going to talk about blood and lymph both in this chapter. So when we are talking about blood, first of all, blood and lymph.
Ma'am, I can't see the board.
Oh, yes. Correct. You cannot see the board. I forgot that you are there. I did not see this. I'm just putting this, and I did not share also, and which I will say. Where is this one? Share. Now, when we are talking about blood and lymph, first of all, now that we start talking about the primary, now that we talk about a developed group of organisms, blood is the primary body fluid. Secondary body fluid, lymph. Why? Because lymph is formed from the blood itself. So to just start with, when we are talking about lymph, is lymph a completely different type of a fluid flowing in a completely different type of a system and completely different set of an organ? No. When we are talking about blood, from the blood only the lymph is formed. Lymph is not a totally different type of a fluid that we have. Every time the lymph that is flowing, of course, in different channels, forms from the blood and again goes and meets with the blood, and that's a cycle always been going on in our body. So blood, and now we try to understand the basic terms here, blood and lymph. Now in this case, we'll try to understand at least 5-6 important functions of the blood. What are some of the functions of the blood? This is important. You get this for questions. What are some of the functions of the blood? First is we will understand the blood is very much helping in the distribution of the nutrients. Can you tell me how? The blood is very much helping in the distribution of nutrients. How? We had studied last year. हाँ, but कैसे? Blood and distribution of nutrients. Relation क्या है? If you remember, last year you had studied, no, digestion you had studied, no? The process of digestion happens, and after the process of digestion, where does the nutrients go? Into the bloodstream. वो process को क्या बोलते हैं? Absorption. So now I talk about distribution of nutrients. How is it? The process of absorption happens and the blood is filled with the blood is now saturated with nutrients. And as and when the blood is distributing all over the body, the nutrients are getting distributed and the cells will be constantly absorbing, or if I say diffusion, from the blood towards the cells. Be it glucose, be it amino acids, fatty acids, etc. No? So that's how you have to understand distribution of nutrients. Next is distribution of respiratory gases. Distribution of respiratory gases. What are respiratory gases? Oxygen, carbon dioxide. So blood के साथ oxygen, carbon dioxide का distribution. What is the link again? Link क्या है? What is the relation when I talk about oxygen and carbon dioxide getting distributed in blood? Yeah. We inhale. Inhalation के बाद क्या होता है हमारे बॉडी में? उठाने के लिए, पेन गिराने के लिए, इरेजर उठाने के लिए आए हो, सीखने भी आए हो? हाँ. What is the relation? कौन बोलेगा? क्या तुम लोग का डिबेट चल रहा है? क्या he's always putting words in your mouth. Now you only say. I will only say. But last year ये सब सीखा था ना, so obviously I have to ask you answers how much you know. Last year virtual में कुछ सीखा ही नहीं था. So when we are talking about what is the relation, now that I'm talking about distribution of respiratory gases, try to find out the relation that is now that we inhale, our lungs filled with blood, filled with oxygen. Our lungs filled with oxygen. Now this oxygen will enter into the nearby blood vessel. The oxygen will enter into the nearby blood vessel. All these things you have studied last year.
Yes.
Almost yes. Thank God, at least you got promoted to 10. So now that we are talking about ये जो process of diffusion हो रहा है from the lungs towards the nearby blood vessel. I don't dare to ask you what is the name of the blood vessel. ये भी तुमने सीखा था पिछले. The name of the blood vessel surrounding the lungs क्या बोलते हैं उसको? Very good. Only this boy studied. बाकी तुम लोग जूस पी रहे थे और सैंडविच खा रहे थे. वीडियो तो ऑफ ही रहता था. Video off रहता. So now that we talk about that, okay, now the blood vessel is not very important now to talk about, but I'm saying that ये जो blood vessel, oxygen diffusion and carbon dioxide, the diffusion the other way, this is what we're talking about as respiratory gases, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and the exchange between the lungs and the blood vessel. But here we are talking about that blood plays an important role in the distribution of the oxygen. So blood oxygen को कहाँ से कहाँ ले जाता है? From the lungs towards the tissues. And carbon dioxide को कहाँ से कहाँ लेके आता है? From the tissue towards the blood, towards the lungs. So ये जो passage, which type of fluid is doing in our blood, in our body? The blood. The blood is constantly acting as a vehicle, helping in the distribution of oxygen to the tissues and carbon dioxide back to the lungs. Distribution of respiratory gases. Now we talk about the next part that also you have studied, distribution of hormones. Is the blood responsible only for the distribution of hormones? Can the hormones get distributed in our body by any other way than the blood? No. I already have studied that the hormones are directly poured into the bloodstream. So obviously we understand that it is only the blood which can carry the hormones from one region to the other and help the other different type of glands also to activate, stimulate. Then what is the other function of the blood? Distribution of waste substances or carrying the waste substances to their sites of waste substances, especially now if I talk about the nitrogenous waste, to their sites of expulsion or release. Did we not talk about the kidneys, which are actually the sites of release of the waste substances? But how are the waste substances brought to the kidneys? Again, by the way of blood, no? So if we talk about that the kidneys are releasing out the waste substances, never mind. But by the way of blood only they can be brought. Is there any other way? There is no other way by which the kidneys can get the waste substances. Can you tell me one more function about the blood? What is the blood also doing? Now that the blood is constantly distributing the nutrients, now that the blood is constantly giving the nutrients to the cells are undergoing the process of breakdown of the nutrients. If I talk about glucose, the cells are constantly breaking down the nutrient and energy release every time. So if I go by these two processes only, here we can also talk about one more function of the blood. What is also happening side by side is maintenance of the body temperature. So maintenance of the body temperature. So this is also a particular function that we can talk about the blood. Body temperature, and little bit here also come across that there's a particular organ which is also helping in this. Which is the particular organ which helps in this? What is that? Hypothalamus. Very good. Hypothalamus very well helps in this regulation, no? But if I talk about these two processes, now if I talk about this process के साथ एक और blood का function related है. क्या है वो? Maintenance of salt and water balance in the body, phosphorylation. So this particular function के साथ that particular function that I am talking about, this is also related. So here we are saying that the blood performs so many functions. The blood performs so many functions. Now, if we now look into the composition of the blood, and now after we are more or less talking about some few functions here, I think more or less about 5-6 functions will already come across. Now we talk about composition. What is the blood made up of? The liquid part, the liquid part, and the cells. Now a notebook, using में देने का है. बोला कुछ तो लिखो उसमें blank pages already. They are filling up their notebooks. Their notebooks are getting over. शायद वो मार्च से लेके ये notebook तुम्हारा चल रहा है. So now, when we are talking about the next part is blood, as we try understanding blood, before we go to the composition part, we have to also understand that the blood undergoes the process of circulation. Now that we are talking about blood and its circulation, there are two modes of circulation that can be observed in organisms. One is we talk about closed circulation. One is we talk about closed circulation, and the other we talk about it open circulation. Now, what is the basic difference between this? No talking. When we are talking about open and closed circulation, let me just show you one figure. When we are talking about open and closed circulation, here we try understanding that when we are talking about open and closed circulation, what it is, here we are trying to understand that there are, just now I already mentioned that the concept of body fluid is not only in vertebrates or in mammals only, it is also in a variety of invertebrates. Can you see? Now, when we are talking about, can we move this further?
Yes.
दिखाई दे रहा है ना तुमको? So now that we are talking about these two figures, what are we trying to understand here? I said certain type of organisms like the mollusks, invertebrates roughly, they have this mode of circulation. What is this mode of circulation called? Open circulation. What is the meaning of open circulation? Open circulation means the body fluid flows in roughly organized tubes. The tubes are not well formed. The tubes are not well formed. The tubes are partially formed, especially when the body fluid is moving or coming very close to tissues. Now, this white part, what is it indicating? It is indicating the tissues. So when the blood is moving through the tissues, the blood comes out of the tubes and flows over the tissues. The blood or the body fluid comes over the tissues, flows over the tissues, and from the tissues, again, it will be drained back to a particular organ, wherever it is, temporarily stored and again released. So if this is the case, I may say that again, this is happening in the invertebrates majorly. Then what about this? Can you see the difference between these two diagrams? Now, in this diagram, we are understanding it is a closed system of circulation where something like us, the body fluid never comes in contact with the tissue, cells and tissues. But the cells and tissues get all the different type of nutrients only by the method of diffusion, only by the method of diffusion. So यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? See here, I'm talking about an organ जहाँ पे the body fluid is stored temporarily and constantly supplied from here and carried by tubes and moving over the tissues, that also in form of by the way of definite tubes here also. So the body fluid is never coming in contact with the tissues and then again going by another route to enter into the organ of storage. If this is the method of circulation, we have to understand this as closed circulation. This is the system of circulation, open circulation. Closed circulation always for developed organisms like vertebrates. And especially the complexity is maximum if I have to talk about the birds and the mammals. Birds and mammals में सबसे ज़्यादा complex है. And if I have to talk about this open system of circulation, majorly in invertebrates. After this, we look into the composition. What about the composition of the blood? What about the composition of the blood? Now, the blood, two prominent parts. What are the two prominent parts? First is the liquid part, and the liquid part is known as what? The liquid part is called plasma. The liquid part is called plasma. And what about the other part? The other part is called formed elements. The other part is called the formed elements, also known as corpuscles. The formed elements, also known as corpuscles. Here again, you will learn why we don't basically use the word cells for the cells of the blood. We are talking about the word corpuscles. Why like that? But when I talk about the liver cells, do we say liver corpuscles? Kidney cells, liver cells, skin cells, because they generally have got or all these cells of the body, they generally have a common feature. A centralized nucleus, all the cell organelles, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, etc., etc. Now, when we talk about the blood cells, we will come across that they at times appear to be quite peculiar because they don't have quite a number of the normal features, the regular features that a normal cell of our body has. But still they perform very, very important functions in our body. Still they perform very, very important functions in our bodies. First of all, let us learn about the plasma. What about the plasma we are going to come across? The plasma, first of all, I said the plasma is the liquid part of the blood. What about some of its features? The plasma is straw color, pale yellowish. Pale yellowish. The plasma is just pale yellowish in color. When we are talking about some of the solids that it has got variety of salts. What are some of the most common solids that the plasma has? Some of the salts are there. Some of the proteins are there. Well-formed proteins are there, which carry out important functions. Apart from that, there are quite a large number of other different type of inorganic ions, radicals. So mainly you have to understand salts, which are the ones. Salt, sodium chloride, sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate. These are the most common ones or most predominant ones types of. And you, based on this, you get a question also, why is the blood salty in taste? At that time, this is the answer that you have to write. Did you ever taste your blood? quite a number of time finger cut हो जाता है, ये हो जाता है. तुम्हारा एक्सप्रेशन देख के लग रहा है ये तो कुछ बात तो हर दिन ही टेस्ट करता हूँ. हाँ हीरो टेस्ट किया था, टेस्ट किया था. तो काफी बार whenever we cut our finger etc no, so all of you must have sensed that the blood is salty. Why the blood is salty? Quite a number of times you brush your teeth and the gums bleed and etc. So that's quite common. So when we are talking about, you get a question there, why is the blood salty in taste? At that time you have to mention this in your answer because of the presence of sodium chloride, sodium bicarbonate. Proteins, what are the most common proteins that the plasma has? The most common proteins that the plasma has is albumin, globulins, and fibrinogen. Then it also has a large number of dissolved ions and radicals. Quite a number of them are there which are dissolved. Next is it will also have suspended cells. The color of the plasma, we understand the color of the plasma is only because of the variety of ions and radicals and proteins which is there dissolved. Now we talk about the formed elements of the plasma. You have to remember some of these important points. Formed elements. Why are they called formed elements? Because one property about the blood cells is they cannot undergo the process of division. The blood cells, they cannot undergo the process of division, but they are constantly formed from the bone marrow. They are constantly formed from the bone marrow. To understand some of the common features, regular features of the blood cells, they are formed from the bone marrow. They are formed from the red and yellow bone marrow. Do you remember the red and the yellow bone marrow? Red bone marrow क्या था? याद करो, get started skeletal system में little bit. Red bone marrow किसको बोलते थे? अच्छा, I will give you a clue. Don't worry. I am talking about ये है long bones of our body. Red bone marrow कहाँ पे? And yellow bone marrow कहाँ पे? हाँ. यहाँ पे and यहाँ पे. Okay. So just to understand, in the next part you will come across specifically. When I am talking about the long bones of our body, these are the major sites where the bone cells are getting formed. Can you give me 3 examples of long bones of our body? And tibia, fibula, and humerus, ribs. Long bones है ribs, है spinal cord, vertebral column, no, joint. Vertebral column is not a continuous long bone. So what are some of the common locations in our body जहाँ पे blood cells बनता है basically where? In the long bones, in the marrow. Marrow is the nutritive substance inside the bone. No? So we are talking about in the long bones of our body, which is one of the common bones now to understand. You are talking about the femur, the humerus, the radius ulna, the tibia fibula, and the ribs. So these are common sites. So they do not undergo the process of division. Remember, the blood cells never undergo the process of division. Then what are their types? We talk about the red blood corpuscles, also known as the RBCs or erythrocytes. These names you have to remember. Erythrocytes. They are erythrocytes. Then we are talking about the white blood corpuscles. The white blood corpuscles. What are they called? Leukocytes. Platelets and leukocytes. Okay, let us learn some features about the RBCs first, the erythrocytes. So when we are talking about these names, ये नाम याद रखना है, erythrocytes, leukocytes, thrombocytes, okay, and correct spelling. We now talk about the RBCs, some few features about the RBCs. How do these blood cells look like? What are their shapes? Biconcave, very good. They are biconcave in shape. Now, if you talk about the blood cells, all the three types of blood cells, wait, I'll show you here. All the three types of blood cells, how do they appear? These are the WBCs. And if I just show you here, you get here all the three blood cells. These are the RBCs, how they look like. These are the WBCs, much bigger. And these are the platelets. The platelets are not even organized cells, remember. They're also known as cell fragments. They are not well-developed cells. So what are some of the specialized features about the RBCs to start with? What are some of the specialized features of the RBCs? RBCs, their site of origin, their basic structural features to understand. So the first that we are talking about is erythrocytes. Erythrocytes. Structurally, they are biconcave. They are biconcave. What is the meaning of biconcave? Draw the cell. It has a depression in the center. And see the cell from the side. The cell more or less has a depression on both the sides. Actually, it's seen from the sides, no? So biconcave. Concave from something. Concavity is not at the base of your desk. There, concavity is on the cell. तुम्हारा हाथ नीचे क्या कर रहा है? पाउच में। शैनविन काश तुम्हारे अंदर थोड़ा 20% सीरियसनेस होता। पाउच में। तुम तो वही करने आते हो। पेन एक बार गिराओ, एक बार उठाओ, इरेजर एक बार गिराओ, एक बार उठाओ, बस हो गया, एक घंटा खत्म है। I doubt you have learned something there. We'll just finish with another biconcave, and then next is we talk about. I say the RBC does not follow the regular features of a normal regular cell. It does not have nucleus, hence it is known as anucleated. किसने बोला amoeboid? RBC का amoeboid नहीं होता, WBC का amoeboid होता है। नहीं, amoeboid WBC का होता है, not WBC. Amoeboid मतलब you can change shapes. RBC shape change नहीं कर सकता। RBC का है। हाँ? RBC कर रहे हैं। ओह, तुम शैनदीप का भाई मत बन जाओ ना। We'll continue again in the next class. देख रॉ नहीं कर रहा। इधर बैठे ना
हाँ